The National Association of Police Athletic Activities League's youth organization welcomes you to its From the Voices of Youth virtual town hall series presented by Microsoft and supported by Extended Stay America. We thank you as well as our panelists for joining today's town hall event and anxiously look forward to having some great discussion and learning from each other, all in the name of youth. So now let's get started and meet today's panelists.
And we got to come together as a people.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Glad everyone was able to join us this afternoon for another great opportunity to hear from the voices of our youth. On behalf of National PAL, I welcome you to the From the Voices of Youth Town Hall series presented by Microsoft and supported by Extended Stay America and Sports Engine. I want to thank everyone for tuning in to today's monumental Town Hall Series event coming to you from Houston, Texas. I want to thank Houston PAL, its youth, its chief, its staff for all of their support and engagement. I also want to thank our National PAL Board of Directors under the direction of Chairman Chris Hill. We look forward to hearing from our youth and esteemed panelists. I would like to now introduce and bring up Ramil Mitchell from the Microsoft Corporation to say a few words. Ramil?
Hello, thank you. And it is such a pleasure to be here with everyone today. On behalf of Microsoft, we'd just like to thank you all for attending today's session. This is a session that we think is going to be incredibly dynamic, one that is relevant for today. Many of you are thinking about these conversations related to social equity, digital equity, related to race, related to where you are today. There are difficult conversations that we're having. There are great conversations that we're having. We're proud to partner with PAL today, and our great sponsors that have also joined us, our great partners that have joined us here today, and look forward to an amazing conversation. A conversation that we think will be enlightening, a conversation that we think will be one that will be open and transparent, full of information, experiences, knowledge, and wisdom that not only are coming from panelists that are joining here virtually, but also from you. So as we think about this and as we have our conversation, as we are engaged in this dialogue, we encourage you to ask questions. We encourage you to leave today with more questions, answers, potential solutions to some of the things that we may uncover. Because as we all come together, we know that one thing is true, and that is it takes hard work and community to make an impact, and I think that we can do this together. So we look forward to it, and we look forward to the conversation. Thanks, Jeff, back to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ramel. And again, thank you so much for Microsoft stepping up and being one of our great corporate partners in making this happen. I also want to make everyone aware, for those that are tuning in, we want to include you as well. So you'll see the Q&A section. If you have a question, please don't hesitate to put your question in there, and we will look at those and look to get as many of those as possible to be a part of our questioning to the panel today. I also want to mention that due to a recent development within his schedule, Houston Mayor Sylvester Turner is unable to attend today's town hall event. However, he is deeply supportive of this initiative, along with the opportunity to hear from the voices of our community's youth. At this time, let's hear from Mayor Turner via his recorded message. Mayor Turner. Looks like
Hello, this is Houston Mayor Sylvester Turner. Welcome to the National PAL and Greater Houston PAL from Voices of Youth Town Hall Series. Thank you to the panelists and the youth for participating in this significant event. It is important for our youth to have a voice during this time in history. National PAL has provided services to youth for over 80 years, and GH PAL was reactivated in 2017. I support the work both organizations are providing to the youth in our community and pray for their continued success.
all right. All right, so what we're going to do now, thank you, Mayor Turner. Appreciate your support, and thank you for your message for having a great session today, which I know that we are. Now it gives me great pleasure to turn the duties of moderator over to Houston PAL Youth Clifton Oriofe. That's my guy. Excuse me for butchering that name again, man. I told you I was going to do it. But we're going to turn it over to Clifton, and he's going to take it away. Clifton, thank you so much for stepping up and being the moderator, and we look forward to having a great session. Take it away, Clifton.
Definitely. Thank you so much. All right, I'm not going to waste anyone's time here, so we can start off with our introductions by our panel members. First, we'll start off with the youth panelists. The order will go first Rafaela, then Roy, then Chloe, then Addison, and then Matthew. Feel free to introduce yourselves.
Okay. Okay, guys, got to make sure you unmute yourselves before you speak.
Is Rafaela here?
Okay, that's okay. Go ahead to Roy. You're fine. Go ahead, Roy.
Hi, my name is Roy Urbina. I'm 17 years old and I go to High School for Law and Justice.
All right.
Hi, my name is Chloe Clear. I'm 13 years old.
Hi, my name is Addison Watson. I'm 12 and I go to KIPP Liberation.
Hi, my name is Matthew Lubin. I'm 12 and I go to Baylor College of Medicine with Anthony Ryan.
All right, that's amazing. All right, we can move on to our adult panelists. So first up, we have Mr. Brandon Denton from the mayor's office and the city of Houston. And now we have Chief Art Acevedo at the Houston, Texas Police Department. We also have Mr. Ramel Mitchell, representative from Microsoft. We also have Executive Chief Troy Finner at the Houston, Texas Police Department as well. And finally, last but not least, we have celebrity guest Eric Sleepy Floyd, a former NBA Houston Rocket. Okay, so like I said, I don't want to waste anyone's time, so we can get right into the questions. So, Roy, would you like to ask the first question and tell us who it's questioned to?
For the Chief of Police, Chief Acevedo, you stated that instead of defunding the police, HPD should delegate some of its responsibility to social groups. What kind of activities do you plan to delegate, and what kind of goals are you trying to reach with this plan?
I think that, first of all, thank you to all the young people for being on here, and thank you, Microsoft, for supporting this great meeting. And I hope that in the future we'll be able to have them past COVID in person so we can really meet with each other. But one of the areas where we think we really need help is in the mental health realm, where we believe when it relates to mental health, homelessness, and addiction, that law enforcement frequently is called because we're the only ones out there to deal with people out on the streets, where we're better off if practitioners are handling those kind of calls, or at a minimum, we have more practitioners assigned to work with us, so we have more capability and capacity across the city. And we really believe that we did that, we'd be able to have better outcomes for the people that need help, and they're falling through short with the security net. So thanks for that question.
Amazing question, even better answer. So now, Chloe, would you like to ask a question and explain who it's to?
Yes, my first question is to Chief Officer Yvette.
How about Chief Art? That works for me. Chief Art works for me.
Okay, so Chief Art, my question is, what is the process of other officers reporting other officers to Internal Affairs Division, and do they stay anonymous?
That's a great question. We actually not only have a process where where they have a duty to report misconduct. That's actually in our policy. Thanks to Mayor Turner, we've always had a duty to intervene, but we've made and strengthened, because of his executive order, the actual duty to intervene and the actual duty to report misconduct by other officers. And for the young people and everyone watching beyond the panelists here, the majority of our complaints are actually not received directly from the community, but it's actually other police officers complaining when they see misconduct. And we have, with thanks to body-worn camera systems, we have a robust auditing policy where supervisors and commands have to audit the body-worn camera videos of the officers, even if we don't have a complaint. And a lot of our complaints comes from both employees and from our own internal audits, but they are required to do so.
That was a really interesting take. A lot of people don't understand the actual number of how much police misconduct there is and how people are holding other police officers accountable. Amazing. So now we can move on to Matthew in the back. Would you like to ask a question?
Yes. My first question for the mayor. What kind of community impact are you expecting by hiring more police officers into HPD versus defunding the police and allocating those funds to social programs?
So I guess I can answer this question with the help of Chief Acevedo and Chief Finner. I'm obviously not Mayor Sylvester Turner. I always say that around the office, they call me Tiny Turner. They say I look like him and we're about the same height. If you wear a suit, that's it. I can, I guess, speak from the community aspect. I can't necessarily put words in Mayor Turner's mouth. You've read what you've said, but the police chiefs can assist as well. I mean, we can go back to Mayor's Complete Communities initiatives and the fact that Mayor definitely wants to invest in communities so that we can have a need for less policing, right? Or at least less policing oversight for some of the things that are minor. But investing in those communities and bringing them up, whether it's, hey, looking at certain communities like Acres Homes, where Mayor is from, and investing in the park space there. Our 50/50 Parks Initiative is built to do that, so we can get parks activated where people can just be outside. I lead a program called Hire Houston Youth, where I'm trying to get more young people job opportunities in those underserved and under-resourced neighborhoods. I think economic development and workforce development definitely helps in those communities where policing is not necessary. They say that idle mind is a devil's workshop, right? If you all were 16 years old and had a job, you don't have the ability to go out into the streets and do anything mischievous, right? If you're in class and you're doing things that are productive, then police won't be knocking on your door getting calls about you. So we need to make more efforts to invest in those programs like Urban Enrichment Institute in Fifth Ward, Oklahoma, that works with young men and women of color. We need to work with 8 Million Stories even more, who helps help youth also get jobs and opportunities so that they won't reoffend, or we can prevent recidivism a little bit. And My Brother's Keeper. So those are some of the things that we're doing to build up our communities in the city of Houston. Now I'll let the police chiefs answer the police question.
And what do they call you? Tiny Turner?
Tiny Turner.
All right, we'll go to the EOC office with you and file that complaint later. I'm kidding, for short people. Hey, Matthew, that is a great question. This is what the mayor has told us. He recognizes, having been born and bred and raised right here in Houston from very humble beginnings, with a large family, and sadly his father died very young, that the community that is most impacted by violent crime are communities of color, and disproportionate communities of color and poor communities, including some poor white communities. There's a lot of poor white people in this country as well. And what he expects to do and what he's demanded that we do is what our community wants of us, not less policing. They want to be safe, they want to be respected, and they want to be able to enjoy our community, our Black and brown, and especially our most vulnerable community. They want to be able to enjoy going to the park, you young people being able to walk to your grandma's house or your aunt's or friend's house without having to worry about a drive-by shooting or a pimp or a drug dealer costing you. And so I think what the mayor wants is to make sure that when you look at our city, that he doesn't believe that the communities of color and poor communities should give up good policing to have the investments such as the complete communities, such as good public health and public and good education and good parks. And so the mayor is very much in tune with the community, and what he wants is to do both, because he understands that people that live in River Oaks that are rich people, they don't care. If you defund the police tomorrow, they don't care, because you know what they're going to do? Pay for their own police like they're already doing. They're going to pay for Constable's Patrol. They're going to pay for River Oaks Patrol. So he is a man that came from the community, continues to live in the communities, continues to live in Acres Home, and his charge for us is go out there, build relationships with those additional officers, get them out of the car, get to know the kids, get to know the businesses, get to know the neighbors, and most importantly, treat people with respect and dignity and keep them safe. And I think that's what everybody wants. Troy, you want to add something?
I mean, unmute. Chief, I do want to add this real quickly. Just want y'all to know, and I'm so proud of our pal, national pal, Mr. Floyd. Thanks for being here with us. And just wanted to say this: when Chief first arrived, and he appointed myself to executive assistant chief along with Matt Slinker, the very first thing he started asking, what do we need? And when I told him, and I said, Chief, you realize we don't have a PAL program? He almost hit the ceiling. And he gave us a directive that day. And he says, you know what? I don't care what it takes. Get it done. Let's get it back up and running. And I'm so proud of that, because it's not so. I've been on 30 years. When I was an officer a few short years back, okay, I was a PAL officer. I got so much from the young men and young women in this community. And it's not so much people think, well, you know what? What did you do for the kids? What do they do for us? And that's what I want y'all to know today. I gained a son. His name is Charles Rudd. He's a sergeant with our police department. And at 10 years old, and he's in his 40s now, okay? I gained another son, and I'm so proud of him. And it's because of our relationship in PAL, and he's simply just the second son to me. I talk to him daily. I know his kids, we're just family. So in this day and age, everything that's going around this nation, it's so important that we cultivate our relationships to move not only our city forward, every city in this nation in this turbulent time, you know. So these relationships are so important. And you guys and ladies, every one of y'all are leaders, and I'm just so proud of y'all today.
That was a very interesting take. Thank you so much. So now, Addison, I believe you haven't asked a question yet.
This question goes to Officer Art. Chief Art. Regina Nicholas and Dennis Tuttle were killed during the execution of no-knock warrant. What is being done to prevent this from happening again? Also, what changes, if any, have been made to HPD's use of force policy after their deaths?
That's a great question. I mean, first and foremost, that was a very tragic situation that I always told my team. I remember when we had the 4 officers shot and the 2, Mr. Tuttle and Regina shot as well, is that we went back to the office, and the next morning I remember telling our team that, listen, I want no stone left unturned to make sure we get to the truth on this, to make sure that we find out the good, the bad, and the ugly. There was no complaints about that search warrant. There was no reason to believe that anything had been done inappropriate. But we went out and we did things that that unfortunately not all departments would have done. And Troy can speak to that, where I asked them to go out and find people that normally wouldn't even be interviewed. And so for many years, we had used no-knock warrants in this city without any major tragedy or any major incident occurring. So we didn't have any reason really to get rid of the no-knock warrants. But like I was just talked in a meeting yesterday, when you have 4 officers shot, 1's paralyzed for life, 2 individuals, civilian members of our community killed in that exchange of gunfire, we didn't wait for a second no-knock warrant to go badly. We got rid of no-knock warrants for all intents and purposes right then and there, within a matter of days. Because 1 death is 1 too many, 2 deaths is 2 too many, and 2 deaths with 4 officers shot and 1 great young man paralyzed for life is something that I don't want to see happen again. So the only way you can do a no-knock warrant in our city is with my approval, and it's been almost 2 years now. It's going on 2 years pretty soon. We're over a year and a half. We have yet to do a no-knock warrant, and the only way they can do it is with the police chief's approval, or if I'm not available, it will be the acting police chief's approval, which would be Chief Finner that you see here, or Chief Slinkard. So we changed that policy. We actually, thanks again to Mayor Turner's executive order that he put out, that you all might have seen, that he announced at George Floyd's funeral, that we had the privilege to attend and represent our department and our city and take care of the family, to make sure that they were safe and that everything went well. Thanks to his executive order, we've taken our past practice in terms of no choke holds, no carotid control holds, no manipulation of the neck, and we've actually codified that in our policy. And the importance of that is that, because it is based on a city, the mayor's executive order, the only way to change that for the next police chief is they have to go back to the city. They have to go back to the mayor, and they can't change it in the cover of darkness. So we've made a lot of changes. We're making more changes, and thanks to the generosity of the people of Houston, we just opened a tactical village where we train our officers, where we will be providing an $11 million facility, state-of-the-art training that will help us avoid tragedies in the future.
Okay, so before we move on to any more questions, this is just to all the guests that are watching at home live. Make sure if you have any questions, any input questions that you would like anyone to respond to put it in the Q&A. It should be on your screen, and you can be able to ask any question you want. All right, so now we can go back to Roy if you have a question.
So for Sleepyhead, my question for you is, what difference do you notice between the relationship with you and the police now, before you started playing in the NBA, after you stopped playing in the NBA, and whenever you were younger?
Can you repeat that question real quick?
So what difference do you notice between you and the police before you started playing in the NBA, after you stopped playing in the NBA, and then whenever you were younger?
Yes, great question, and I'm proud to be on with everyone here. This is a great program educationally for all of us to get as much information as possible. And so just proud to be a part of this conversation. My relationship with the police department growing up, I grew up in Gastonia, North Carolina. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina right now. Gastonia, North Carolina is about 30 miles outside of Charlotte. It's a small town, maybe about 50,000, a lot more now, but when I was in Gastonia, it was about 50,000 population, very small town. But my hometown, when I was before, I got to college and moved on, one of my best friends was in the police force. His father was. So I had a great relationship with his family, and by having that relationship, I was introduced to the police department. And growing up, they had the boxing leagues where I wasn't any good at boxing, but I participated in the boxing training camps that they had at the police department. Just all different kind of activities. So in our small town, I did have a good relationship with the police department, only because because of my relationship with one of my best friends, and his father was a part of the police department, and he made sure he would come by and pick me up and make sure that I was involved in the police activities that was within the Gastonia County. And as I moved on, I had two great parents, and they were really, influential in my decision making and making sure I did the right thing. So a lot of times we put a lot of responsibility on the police, but I think as young men, young women, we have to take some responsibility and some initiative on our part to make sure we're doing as much as we can, on the field, off the field, in the communities, not to put ourselves in tough positions where people can make decisions on our life. So my relationship at a young age was very good with the police department. I ended up going to Georgetown University in Washington, D.C., where Coach Thompson would take us on Saturday mornings to the Lorton prison systems, just so we could see where we didn't want to end up and the things that we needed to do to make sure that we wasn't putting ourselves in that position. So we would go Saturday mornings, 7:30 in the morning, 6:30 in the morning, and talk to the prisoners at Lorton. And these were guys who were doing, lower crimes all the way up to the top. So just having conversations with them and listening and not making the same mistakes that they made to put them in that situation, and just trying to educate yourself. And after the NBA, just to continue to work with the police department. I've known Jeff for a long time, and I've worked with Powell here in Charlotte and across the country, and they do an amazing job of educating our kids about the police department and how to communicate and how to relate to the police department and all the different programs that they have available to educate you.
Definitely. Unfortunately, one of our panelists, Rafaela, was not here. We're not able to join because of her computer kicking her out. So I'll be asking one of her questions. This is for actually Executive Chief Mr. Finner. Have you ever experienced racism while on the force? If so, how did you handle it, and how has it made you to who you are today? If not, have you or any of your HPD officers experienced racism or not shown up for work, anything related to a protest, showing that they want improvement on the system that you have?
Chief, I think we're gonna hire this young man. He's doing an outstanding job, as everybody is. We're just so smooth, man. You make us all look bad, and we're so-called trained professionals. But great question. So racism is in society. Racism is going to be in the police department. And as an African-American police officer, there has been some instances where I experienced it. But generally, my experiences with this department has been great, a great place to work. But I think I was probably on about 4 years as an officer, and we had a sergeant. It was during the month of February, and he was a big hunter, and he had a vehicle that was all in camouflage. He would take it out and hunt. So he put a big poster of Martin Luther King on it. And I really don't like talking about it this much, but I want to bring it up and be honest and truthful to you. So I thought it was disrespectful. And my chief can attest to this. I'm an outspoken guy. I don't speak a whole lot, but when it's time to speak up about wrong, I'm the first person to do it. So I approached him because he was my supervisor. And at that time, he was a supervisor of predominantly Black officers in a predominantly African-American area at a predominantly white station with a predominantly white department. So I thought it was disrespectful. And I asked him, what was the significance? And he referred to it as a jungle vehicle. So Jungle Bunny, and I know that might be a little dated for some of you youngsters, but Sleepy Floyd and Chief and Jeff, y'all understood what it meant. Yeah. So I didn't lose my cool, and I was very upset. And I wanted to be honest with you, I wanted to choke it, because it was so disrespectful. There was no reason. But we have a process today as we had back then, and I filed a complaint. And it went up to the chief's office, and it was Chief Sam Nucci at the time. And, he did what he needed to do. He didn't lose his job, but the chief let him know if that happened again, he would lose his job. And the moral of the story, though, this same sergeant retired probably about 5-6 years ago. And he came to me and he apologized. And, I told him, I said, Sarge, and I'm way up here at this rank. I said, I forgave you a long time ago. Okay. But I just wasn't going to come and tell you that, but if you would have came to me a long time ago, you would have known it. So the racism is there, but you have to look for the positive. I'm one person. I want the youth to understand this in our PAL program, look at reality, but look at what's positive, and address the negative, but don't lose so much time. And this is what's wrong with our nation right now. Everybody is just looking at so much negative. And I know it's some painful things out there, but let's try to do what we can to give people's perception and their experiences, give it value, because your perception is your reality. My perception is my reality. And the goal of it is we have to give value to that and build bridges. And I'm not going to tell you one time, lay down when somebody's mistreating you or don't do that. Stand up, but handle it the right way. Don't lose your cool on it. And that was my, negative experience with the agency. Good question.
Definitely. I think accountability is something that everyone needs. So now I think we can move on to Mr. Hood. I think this will be a perfect time to ask one of the Q&A questions.
Sure. Thank you, Clifton. I have a question. We have questions for our young people. Again, we're about voices of youth. So we want to hear a question that's going to be posed to them. As a youth in the community, what most concerns you or bothers you? and we're going to start with Addison.
So, what concerns me the most is police not treating, not all police, but the ones that we know about who did wrong and should be put in jail for it and get their consequence. So that's my concern because they're hurting us Black folks the most by killing us, throwing us in jail for no reason, or just putting a lot of force on us just because the color of our skin. And I don't think it's right because it's just unfair. And we're doing all these protests, but to me, I feel like we're not getting nowhere because it's like they don't understand what we're trying to say.
Okay. Thank you, Chloe.
My concern is like when people go out on the street or like when your parents send you to school, they think you're gonna come home, you're safe. But as soon as I walk out of the house, I could be dead on the doorstep. Like somebody could just shoot me for no reason. I could be stopped by the police for no reason at all. So that's like one of my concerns is that I could get out of the house and I'm coming home safe. Then I'm gone or I'm in jail for something I didn't do or somebody kidnapped me or something.
Roy?
My concern, and the chief of police like brought this up perfectly about homeless people and mental disabilities and all that. My concern in the future is that police officers and like the police force isn't going to be able to handle like extreme cases or even like the mild cases we see right now with homeless people, because what I've seen is with police officers is they don't know how to properly address and how to properly like handle the situation. It hasn't happened to me or anyone I know, but I've seen it like in public and whenever we're just driving down the street, and that's my concern. Like when is it that's going to become too much of a problem that we're not going to know how to handle it? Like right now with racism and all that, like it's accumulated over the years and we didn't know how to properly handle and have the discussion in public and all that, and that's why it's coming out like such a big deal, and which it is a big deal. And right now what I feel is that with mental disabilities and homeless people and all that, it's going to become a big deal that we're not going to be able to handle.
Awesome, thank you. And Matthew?
My concern is about how police killing innocent, unarmed Black men for just because of the color of their skin, and that's just not right. And I just want them to stop.
And lastly, I wanted to say with Clinton, if you're there, if you have a question or something that bothers you as well, I want to hear from you as well.
Honestly, I feel like my biggest concern would definitely just be accountability, because I'm afraid of the fact that the only times that police officers or anyone that commits a misconduct when they're in a position of power is only primarily because they're being recorded. And I feel like once you eliminate recording where like a body camera footage isn't being produced or released for any sort of reason, I'm afraid that the only way for them to be held accountable is because they're recorded, rather just because of the fact that they're in a position of power. And I honestly just I'm concerned with that the most.
Awesome. Thank you. And what I would like to do is either Assistant Chief Finner or Chief Acevedo, if either of you guys wanted to respond to some of those things that were expressed from our young people.
Hey, Chief, I'll yield to you.
I'm trying to, am I off mute? Okay, yeah. Well, those are great questions and concerns. Look, we got to start off in this country by acknowledging a problem. You cannot kind of like if you're a person of faith, the first step to salvation, if you're a follower of Christ, is to admit the sin before you can be absolved of that sin, before you can get forgiveness. That's one. We have got to acknowledge the fact that disproportionate communities of color are impacted, and poor communities are disproportionately impacted when there is malfeasance committed by a police officer. I mean, that's just a fact of life, and sadly, I don't think our country has come to grips with that until this year. I think that George Floyd's death finally hit a nerve with middle-class America, upper-class America, with corporate America, and we're finally starting to see organizations and people that have never acknowledged the fact that Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter has been around for 7 years, but I think that we're at a point where we're actually starting to acknowledge that. And I think that's the first step into getting beyond these issues. Because if you pay attention to the people that started all these other lives matter, their Blue Lives Matter, All Lives Matter, in response to Black Lives Matter, many of those people to this day have not acknowledged that Black lives do matter. They don't realize that therein lies the problem. Having said that, I believe that for the young people here, that we've got a lot of things going on here in Houston between our police department, Police Activities League, our Afro-American Police Officers League that's actually out in the communities now, interacting with young people. Even the Houston Police Officers Union is out in the community interacting with young people to let you know what to expect from us when you're contacted by the police, and just as importantly, to let you know how you can respond to a police contact to keep you safe. I'll never forget going to midnight basketball with Coach Silas. Remember Coach Silas? I think he's from the Spurs. They're sleeping on Friday nights. He's there at midnight basketball in East Austin, where I was the police chief almost a decade. Every one of the players were probably early 20s to early 30s, right? Every single one was African American. And I asked them, by show of hands, how many think there's bad cops? Keep them up. All hands came up. By show of hands, how many of you think there are racist cops? How many hands came up? All hands came up. And then I asked, so why would you want to give that bad racist cop the opportunity to act on that bad heart by, panicking and running from the police or fighting the police or giving him any opportunity to act on their prejudice? And I explained to them what my dad told me as an immigrant whose English is a second language. Son, I don't care what you've done. When you're contacted by the police, you comply, and if they did the wrong thing, we will then complain. We will take care of it later. So to the young people out there, please know this, that most police officers, and I think you know that because you're interacting with our police officers on a regular basis, are good people, but there are bad officers. And it's important that whenever our youth give a bad officer an opportunity to act on that. Secondly, the eyes and ears of the police department is the community. When you are not treated properly and you're mistreated by anyone, whether it's a police officer or a bad teacher, because you asked Troy about racism as an immigrant, the only non-English speaking kid in my class in 1969, I can tell you that I've experienced it firsthand. I always kind of laugh when white people or activists are trying to tell me what it's like to be a person of color. And I'm like, you've never walked in my shoes and you're trying to act like you know. You don't know nothing. You don't live in my community. You're not part of where I grew up. You didn't even grow up with the challenge that we grew up. So I will close with this. I'll turn it to Chief. Most officers are good, but there are bad officers. And I don't say a few bad apples because sadly we've had to run out 160 plus officers in a little under 4 years here. So I call it bushels of apples, right? And in bushels, it's 37 or more per bushel, depending on the size of the apples or something like that. I don't remember my math too well. So please, whatever you do, don't panic. My dad used to say to me before I became a cop, son, you can get out of jail. You can't get out of the cemetery. Never fight the police, never run from the police. We will deal with it. If they're unjust, we will deal with it. And then when I became a cop, he told me the same thing. Son, you can get another job. You can get out of jail, but you can't get out of the cemetery. So defend yourself if somebody tries to hurt you. So I think that if we speak the truth and we actually not make decisions based on a fear, not because of what happened to me or the way I was treated, but because of the way somebody else was treated, that may have an impact on the way we react, and we put away our broad brushes. We need to start judging each other as Americans and children of God, not through the prism of color, not through the prism of the religion, not through the prism of where we live, not through the prism of what we've got in terms of socioeconomics, or not through the prism of the uniform we wear, but through the prism of everybody's individual actions. And if we started to do that, I think we'll end up in a better place. But if you have an officer or a teacher or a coach or anyone of an authority that does not treat you appropriately, you can't keep quiet about it. As soon as you can, you've got to report it, because we cannot hold the people accountable if people don't have, and it takes courage. It takes courage to complain against the police. It really does, because of mistrust. But when we don't report bad policing or bad coaching or bad teaching, guess what wins? The bad. And that's a detriment to the community, and it's a detriment to the good police officers. Troy, you want to add something there, my friend?
Yeah, real quick. Y'all see we have fun around here at HPD. We work hard, but we're true to one another. And one thing I want to say to all the youth that's listening right now, use this opportunity. Chief Acevedo, myself, and our other chiefs, we were on the ground at all these protests in Houston, okay? So we heard from them, okay? And a big problem is with law enforcement and some other entities, we don't listen. You know, we don't hear people pain. And I hear you guys. And that's the main thing that those youth was telling us on every protest. Y'all don't hear us. Y'all don't hear us. We do hear you. And we're standing here willing and able to not only hear you guys, engage you guys, and listen, and even craft policy to help us to better serve all communities, especially the communities of color where we have the conflict. So seize this opportunity, do it the right way. If you want to protest peacefully, but you know what? Organize yourself and speak up to the truth, how you feel. And thank y'all for being honest with us on how you feel. And the final thing I want to say, as a 30-year officer here in Houston, Chief is, I think, at 34 years of service. It breaks our hearts when good kids, you know, are fearful of police officers. So we have to do a better job. So help us to hold ourselves accountable as we hold all the other officers, you know, that work for us and with us accountable as well. Thank y'all.
Perfect. All right, we can go back to the questions. Specifically, Matthew, can you ask your question number 3 about your business to Ramel Mitchell, the Microsoft representative?
As a young entrepreneur, my business inspires the community by spreading a positive message through our products. Sisi Mi Familia is Swahili for we are family. We create and sell our own t-shirts here at the Shea Community Center. What do you all think we can do to inspire? We can do to inspire positivity? What can young people do to help spread positivity in our communities?
Yeah, Matthew, if I heard the question correctly, it sounds like you're asking, as an entrepreneur, what can you do to create and inspire positivity in the communities? And so, if I heard that correctly, one of the things, let me first just start off by saying, I love the fact that you're an entrepreneur. We love entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs create, they develop, they produce. And oftentimes, one of the things that we are familiar with, we're familiar with consuming. Many of us are familiar with purchasing something. You probably have a smartphone or what have you. Probably have a tablet or a computer. You have all these apps on whatever devices that you have. But the question becomes, even in that platform, what have you created? So when I hear a question from a young person that says, that they're an entrepreneur and what can they do to create an impact in their community, it really does. It's a special thing. I say this. I mean, part of the reason why we're on a call here today with everyone is to address some of the issues that we have seen, that you guys have seen. We have HPD here giving their perspective in terms of issues and challenges that they've seen. You've provided, some awareness and your perspective of issues and challenges. I think as an entrepreneur, whenever you have an opportunity to create something that can make an impact, that can create something that can empower other individuals, your friends, your family, your community, that's a great thing. One of the things I would say would be to look at some of the challenges that we've touched upon today. Some of them might be able to be solved by technology. Some might be able to be solved by other means and methods. But within that, you have an opportunity to identify a need, fulfill that need through your business, and maybe have HPD or PAL as one of your first customers. I'm just throwing that out. I'm just saying. You have a captive audience here of what we would consider business leaders and decision makers. But leverage this opportunity, whether it's your work in PAL or whether it's something that you're inspired by, to create, to develop, and then produce, and that makes an impact. And we're not just saying that just to say it. When I think about Microsoft's mission is based on your question, and our mission is to empower every individual and organization on the planet to achieve more. When I think about the mission of the city and the work that's being done by Mayor Turner and so many others, Chief here, it's to make an impact, to respond to the needs of the citizens in Houston, to do great things and great work for the citizens. That's their job. That's their work. That's what brings joy and happiness. When I think about Sleepy, and by the way, Sleepy, fellow Hoya, so so great seeing this. When I think about even his work in MBA, it was about not just bringing joy to himself, but bringing joy and happiness to others that were fans of the sport. So when you think about your business, whether that's a for-profit company, whether it's a nonprofit, whether it's you or your friends, whether you're developing all by yourself in the lab, creating, at night when everybody else is sleeping. Drake likes to say, I'm in the lab while everybody is partying. But when you are doing the work that makes you happy, that you can go out and make an impact, you will bring joy, you will bring happiness to others. And at the end of the day, hopefully you can empower. So I don't know if I under-answered or over-answered your question, but there's a lot there. And so I'm inspired by that question and look forward to a year from now seeing what you've done.
Okay, perfect. Chloe, would you like to ask your next question?
Yes, my question is for Sleepy Floyd. What do you think about the current protests in the NBA?
I just think that the NBA is doing an amazing job. The players partnering up with the commissioner of the league, and they're bringing their intellect, their individual powers, and also collectively to make aware the challenges and inequality and police brutality, and putting it at the forefront. And players like LeBron James and Russell Westbrook, these guys who they have a platform, and they're really stepping out on others' behalf, because a lot of these guys don't really have to do that. Now, this is what I want you guys to understand. These guys giving back to the community, giving back to society to make it better for all. So I want to commend the NBA, the players, the individual players, and really, the league partnering with the players to make an impact. Now, what it's going to take is players going back into their own communities, and you know, it doesn't have to be the superstars to do it all the time. It may be the fifth guy on the team or the guy at the end of the bench who come from a place like Gastonia, North Carolina, like I did, and you go back into your community and you talk with kids, you sit down and let them know, you know, what the challenges are, but how to defeat those. You know, sometimes we can get caught up on, okay, it's so bad, and it is, you know, with George Floyd's murder and all the negativity that's been going on in our country, you know, here over the last 20, 25 years and longer. But we have to stay focused as young men and women on your goals and what you're trying to accomplish. You know, never let a bad situation like the police commissioner was saying dictate your future. So when I was talking about earlier about not putting yourself in positions or doing the best that you can, not to put yourself in a position where some racist cop or someone woke up, you know, on the wrong side of the bed that morning. Don't put yourself in that position if you can. And there are certain situations you did nothing, you know, it was no fault of your own. And if someone wants to do something, yeah, they probably could. But if you can eliminate that potential, like one of the panelists was saying, you know, idle mind, you know, is a bad thing. So what you're doing now on this podcast is so positive. So, you know, back to your question, I think it's amazing what the NBA is doing. The protests are so effective. They're getting things done. It's not just a protest, but what's coming behind that, and what the league is doing, and the players, the current players are doing. They need to be commended. They really need to be commended, each and every one of them, and the work that they're doing to make it better for all of us.
Hey, Mr. Floyd, can I just extend my condolences to you and your fellow Georgetown alum on the loss of Coach Thompson, as I remember really cheering him on when he was really the first Black African-American coach in NCAA and took the Hoyas to all the way to the promised land. So my condolences go to you, and I don't know if you call it Hoya Nation or what they call the
Hoya Nation, Hoya Paranoia, and he was a great man. Let me just say real quick, not to take too much time, but what he did 35 years ago, taking the team off the court to bring attention to race inequality. Prop 48 was a huge issue. Players like myself get an opportunity to go to Georgetown, which is a white Catholic Jesuit institution, very high academic level, as you know, and just giving us all the opportunities. So thanks for bringing that up, and you know, we love them, and it's been a real emotional last 2 days for, you know, Hoya Nation, and he was a great mentor of mine, and he definitely will be missed.
And he showed that anything can be done if we just don't give up on ourselves.
That's right.
Not give up on ourselves.
Definitely. Okay, so Addison, would you like to ask the next question?
This question goes to Chief. What are your thoughts on the friendly fire accidental shooting that took place in Fort Bend County in May of 2020? Why would the police officer be charged with murder?
I heard you're really broken up. I'm sorry. I know.
Hey, Addison, repeat your question one more time.
Regina Nicholas and Dennis Tuttle what are your thoughts on the friendly fire accidental shooting that took place in Fort Bend County in May of 2020? Why would the police officer be charged with murder?
I'm not familiar with that case. I apologize. Fort Bend County. I'm not sure which case you're referring to, so I really can't.
Chief,
do you know which one she's
Chief,
referring to?
I think I do, but you correct me if I'm wrong, young lady. That was when you had two officers responding to some type of call, a burglary call, and one of the officers accidentally shot the other officer. And I don't have all of the details, but I think that's what you're talking about and referencing. If that's the case, it is a tragic incident. And when things like that happen with no fault or no intent, you got to go back and look at our training and look at how we approach the house and whatnot. And I'm sure that that's part of it. But we got one officer dead and another officer here that has to live with that forever, you know. So I don't think it's anything that we look at criminally. You know, you look at it as lessons learned and try to move forward so it don't happen again. If that's the one you're talking about, I hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry I wasn't helpful. I'm not familiar with
Yeah.
the case. I apologize.
And Chief, and I want to double check on that too, because it's in Fort Bend County, but
Yeah.
Sergeant Brown is saying that they charged an officer, and it may be because of some type of negligence and whatnot. But you here in this Houston area, I think we're gonna research that and get back with you on that. Okay.
Thanks, Troy.
All right, perfect. We'll start it back up from the beginning. Roy, do you have a question?
So I have one. I don't know if who's better to answer. I don't know if like the chief or assistant chief. But my question is, since the police rollout of body cameras, have you seen any different trends on how police officers engage with the public? And what kind of changes have you done? Within the police department to fix problems that have been posed?
Want to go ahead, Troy?
Yeah, look, I think it's revolutionary, but I think when we rolled the cameras out to major cities, which was probably give or take 5-6 years ago, Chief, when most of them started rolling out, there was a change, but it's not a panacea, okay? There still have to be a lot of policy crafted and procedures to make sure that we're doing what we need to do. But I tell you what, I think it's a great thing, because when the officer knows that he or she is being recorded, all her actions or his actions, things are more than likely a better result, okay? The same thing with the citizen, but you may ask, well, Chief, we've seen a lot of body-worn camera where officers shoot people or do something wrong and whatnot. But I tell you what, at least we have a record of it, an unedited record, okay? If somebody's recording on their cell phone or another device, they can get a hold of that and they can, manipulate it. One good thing about the body-worn cameras, most systems is like ours. An officer can't go in and manipulate that, okay? So once it's recorded, it's there. And it gives us a way to go back and look at what actually happened. And especially when there's a complaint, and especially when somebody gets seriously injured or killed in an incident, we can go back and see exactly what happened. We can hold officers accountable and discipline them up into indefinite suspension if need be, but also you can look at it as lessons learned. What went wrong there? Or sometimes the positive, what went right? So it's a great thing. And Chief, you might want to add.
You're on mute.
Hey, Chief, you're muted.
There, I'm back. I apologize. Body-worn cameras, I think, first of all, it's a very expensive investment. But how do you put a price tag on accountability and on public trust? It's very important that we have these body-worn cameras, because there are some people. Number one, we want to make sure that we record good policing and that we hold bad cops accountable. But two, there are some people that have made a sport out of going around videotaping police action. And they always show the police reaction, like a takedown, but they never show what led up to that takedown. So the good thing about cameras, body-worn cameras, is that it shows what happened before, during, and after, if the officer activates it like they're supposed to, and people are smart enough to make their own assessment. And so it's expensive, but I give thanks for it, because we have and more often than not, it's saving officers from bad complaints, and it's shedding light on bad policing. So It helps the good officers and it holds accountable the bad officers, and ultimately it makes public safety and our community relations better because we have basically the communities watching us with the investment of body worn cameras.
Hey, Jeff, if you don't, Chief, is that Matt Slinker back there
Where?
in the room?
Where?
Matt
Oh, yeah.
Slinker. Hey, can you step up just a little bit? Jeff, if you give me 1 minute, I just want to address something that the kids were asking about with regards to race and relationships. This is Executive Assistant Chief Matt Slinker.
Hold on.
As you can see, he's a Caucasian brother.
My mask in case he's got COVID.
Okay. So he's a Caucasian brother. Chief is Cuban, and I'm African American. But let me tell you how we do it here in Houston. Those are my brothers, and we every day at the top of this organization, we challenge one another emotionally, spiritually, and ethically every day. And we give value to everybody's experience. When I want to know something, what's going on in the Caucasian community, or get some perspective from that, I get it from Matt because I respect him enough and I give value to his experiences. And he does the same for me, and as well as Chief. That's how we manage here in Houston. And that's why we're successful. Now, we have bumps in the road just like any other agency, but we handle things a little bit differently here. And I wanted to acknowledge him and just let you guys know we have a team from all walks of life. And whenever there's diversity and there's love and there's understanding, you can move through any issues that God puts before us.
Amen.
Anyone. So I'm sorry, I just wanted to add that.
All right, preacher.
No problem. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Want to say anything, Matt?
Thank you.
Are you off mute?
Yeah, we're off mute, aren't we?
So I've been in the back working over here because my boss keeps me working all the time. But no, I've been listening in, and wonderful conversation, wonderful dialogue. I couldn't have said it better than Chief Fenner. Chief Fenner is I love that man like a brother. You know, I've been here nearly 3 decades myself, serving this city, serving the community. I love it as much today as I did on day one. And to have conversations like this gives me hope, right? It gives me, you know, a sense that, you know, God, by whatever name you call God, is in control. And if we could get on that agenda and get on the agenda of loving one another the way that God has laid out for us to do that, then I think that we have great times ahead of us. I think that the best days of American law enforcement and how we interact with our city are definitely ahead of us, but we have to do the work. We have to put the work in, and this is a great example of that. And so being a father of 2 young people, one still in high school, one in college, listening to all of you today gives me a great deal of enthusiasm and encouragement, and we got to encourage one another. You know, we have to. These are not easy issues to talk about, but definitely issues that we need to face, but it's much better when we face them together. So thank you for your participation.
Thanks, man.
Thank you. Thank you.
There's a
Clinton?
Matt on here too from the kids.
All right.
It's a solid name. Gift of God.
Definitely.
Clinton.
All right, I think we could take this time to see if any of the panelists have any questions to the youth.
I have a question. Can I ask a question? This is to Mr. Floyd. You know, sometimes my heart aches for 2 reasons. One, I've been doing this for 34 years. Love it. Quit law school to be a cop, but out of a sense of patriotism, I wanted to give back to the country that gave us as Cuban refugees the greatest gift of all, which is freedom. My dad used to say the worst day in the United States is better with freedom is better than the best day in communist Cuba. Yeah. But I think life's about points of reference. I tell people, this is my 3rd police department. California Highway Patrol for 21 years, Austin, Texas, their police chief for almost 10 years, and here for almost 4. You can't appreciate or really assess what's in front of you unless you've had something to compare it to. And as messed up as policing appears to be today, what hurts me for the good cops is that I know after being a cop for 34 years that as much improvement as we need to make, we're so much better than we were 30 years ago when I started. And I always tell folks, we need to do everything we can to hold accountable bad cops but we also got to lift up the good. And so as a man that's probably around my age, I'm not sure what your age is, or maybe you're younger, I don't know, older, and maybe for our national PAL chair here, would you agree or disagree that policing has gotten better in your lifetime that gives us hope? Or do you think it's as bad as it was maybe 30 years ago?
Well, I just want to say thank you for all you do in the police department in Houston and across the country. It's very important that we respect the good cops and the good police departments. And just like anything, there's some bad apples in anything. And if you're part of that group, and my message are to the kids, I mean, if you associate yourself in a group and one kid is, or one of your friends is going left and you know you should be going right, then you try to help them from going left, but you keep going right, okay? For each of you kids sitting there, you know, on this panel today. But I feel that, you know, I grew up with friends in the police department. Some of my best friends were in the police department for 30, 40 years and here in North Carolina. I had friends when I played with the Houston Rockets that was a part of the police department that were very good friends of mine. And it's a challenging job. I know it. And I think the community knows it. But I think when you have, you know, bad situations, it really impacts the African-American community. It impacts our young kids, our young men and women, because they see it on television. And as a mentor and someone who works with kids all the time, it's a challenge to get them to you know, trust what you're saying and put your, as I keep saying throughout this podcast, put yourself in a good situation. You know, the best you can, stay involved in school, stay involved in activities. I would tell the young kids, involve yourself with the police department. Like I said, I grew up trying to box at the police academy, you know, doing basketball, playing basketball leagues against the police department. We would bring in the police department. This is back when I was your age, you know, 12, 13 years old. So my experience obviously is probably a lot different. It is a lot different than a lot of people, but to answer your question, yeah, the police department is a lot better, but you know, racism, inequality, the court systems, you know, when you know 70% of our prisoners are incarcerated with Black men and women, that's a problem. But I would tell the kids, you know, try to talk to your police department. They're taking a lot of time today out of their busy work schedule. I can imagine some of the things they're gonna have to catch up with after this podcast. So what they're doing, taking the time to talk with each and every one of you, is impressive. And I hope you really, after this podcast, take what they've been saying throughout this podcast and relay it to your friends. Tell them you had a great experience, a great conversation with the head of police of the police department. Go tell your younger friends, Black and white, that this is something we all need to do. And encourage your classmates and your friends to walk up to a police officer and engage them in conversation. And I would have to agree with the police officer, you know, 80%, 90% of them, they will respect you and they will conversate with you. But it's that 10% or that 5% or whatever it is that impacts and makes us all look, you know, makes everyone looks bad. And I have friends, you know, if you got a friend that does something and you're in the company of that friend, then that comes down on you too. So again, I don't want to take too much time, but I hope I answered your question. Please.
I would like to, Chief, just jump on to what Sleep was saying too in that question in terms of policing, you know, better than let's say, I'll probably go back 15 years in terms of history, 15, 20 years. But or when I was Chloe and Matthew and Addison, Roy's age here. You know, when I think about it, my perspective on police officers was quite different than what it is here, than what it is today, with the understanding that the job is incredibly difficult. But even with that, I think the upside that we're seeing now is that we're, you know, more police officers or more police departments across the country, like HPD, they're using technology that's making an impact in terms of better policing, right? When you think about when I think about difficult jobs, it's one of the most difficult jobs to do every day. The amount of stress, the amount of anxiety that an officer has, when they go to one particular event or an issue that they're resolving, then they're off to the next. That's a difficult environment. But in the case where bad incidents happen, and we've all kind of pointed it out, we've all seen it. The upside here is that we've all seen it. We've seen video that from whether or not it's a citizen or whether it's a dash cam or our phones that are capturing. We've seen the amplification of bad things sometimes really quickly. That's added an additional layer of accountability that police departments are proactively thinking about. Hopefully that will also impact and continue to shape training and the amount of training that officers receive. Hopefully all of this will impact policy decisions. And we've heard, I think, a little bit today in terms of in case of knock warrants, which you guys asked that question about, how that within a matter of days that changed. And so as tough as the job is, I think that the evolution of becoming a police officer has also evolved. Now I say that, I'm not saying I've never, I've had a ticket or two. I've been pulled over a number of times. I know each one of those times. And each time I go back to thinking about what Chief has said, that his dad said, how do you think about this situation and this interaction? And, I hope that what happens out of all of this is that we see a couple things. We continue seeing this investment that some of you have pointed out into other areas like mental health and various other services that are happening in the community. That we continue to see these type of investments in students right now as well, right? Into the community, that we continue to see an investment in community policing for these type of efforts and these type of partnerships, that we continue to see the training increase. And these stories that, it's very rare that you have chiefs on talking about their experiences here. And then I get the sense, and I know that they're having the same conversations with their officers, because culturally looking at policing as a profession, I think what we're seeing, and the chiefs may have a perspective on this, is that the culture of policing has changed over the last 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 40 years, and that that change is being amplified over the last 4 months. And so I think that hopefully that we continue to see improvements as we move ahead.
Hey guys, what I want to do is, because I want to make sure that we stay true to the initiative that we're here as the voices of youth. So with that, I want to kind of circle back, and I appreciate everybody's intake and intel in regards, but we're gearing up on close to an hour and a half, and I don't want to close up without hearing some more from our young people as we may look to start closing it out. So with that, Chloe, Matthew, Addison, Roy, Clinton, want to hear some more from you guys. If there's anything else that you guys want to bring up, or question, or feeling, or sentiment, while you have this forum and this stage to be able to be verbal. This is really the time for you guys. So I want to hear, as before we close out, and thank everyone. I want to make sure that there wasn't anything left on the table for you guys to kind of to bring to the table and all as well. And if so, feel free to to verbalize that at this time.
I have a question for Sleepy Floyd. How did you get your nickname?
I got that nickname playing baseball. I was so bad at baseball and I hated baseball, but my dad always wanted us to play multiple sports. So I chose baseball as a second sport. Wasn't a smart decision, Chief. You know, it was terrible. So I was playing second base, 4th grade, 9 a.m. game. And the first pitch, you would know it would come right to me. And I was looking down at the ground and it went right through my legs. And someone in the stands hollering, "Get that kid out of the game, he's asleep." And my little teammates heard that. And, you know, it's been with me forever. Like, people don't really know my real name a lot of times. You know, I had one guy come up to me and he said, "Man, you look just like," he said, "What's your name?" I said, "Eric." He said, "You look just like Sleepy Floyd." He walked off. So, no, but it's been with me forever, and that's what people know me about.
All right, Chloe or Matthew or Roy or Clinton?
I don't have anything.
Okay. Clinton or Roy?
I guess I do.
Okay.
Like, digressing from a lot of like the very intense questions, right? Like qualified immunity, etc., all those things. We can easily say that almost all of the questions are derived with like one of three. Either 1, what is the police doing? 2, what will the police do? Or 3, what has the police done? So I want to ask a question that, like, not like it's similar, but it's more like, what do you want us to do? What do you want, like, the average American, the average youth, just specifically people from like low income areas, anyone? What do you want society to do to have reform with the police? Because in the end, it isn't just you guys doing all the work, but sometimes it's us as well.
Wow, that's a great question.
And yes, he's a PAL kid.
Yes, he is. Tell Chief he needs to unmute, Chief.
I want you to take over my job. I want you to grow up. And, you know, they always say about being the change. You know, as tough as things are right now in this country, I have so much hope that tomorrow is going to be a better day, like Colin Powell's parents used to tell them, because of the young people on this panel. Young people today are more inclusive, more tolerant. They're more inquisitive. They are more perceptive, and I think that you are the ones that are going to save this country from itself. If old people like me were stay in charge, we are going to crash and burn. It is the young people that we see. Look at the question. Look at what you just said. You know, how old are you, may I ask?
I'm 17.
You got the wisdom of you know, Confucius or something, like a 50-year-old, you know, Grand Master Yoda. And, you know, I'm not being facetious. I mean it. What we want you to do is we want you to shoot for the stars. Don't let anyone or anything discourage you. Don't let people, when people tell you you can't do it as long as it's not illegal, I want you to work 10 times as hard to prove them wrong. I promise you, throughout my life, if I let the naysayers tell me you can't do it, I wouldn't be sitting here today as a little kid who came to this country with a mom and dad, $5 in his pocket that the Cuban government gave him, the clothes on our back, and a few pictures, to grow up to be the police chief in America's 4th largest, soon to be 3rd largest, Texas' largest city, in the world's most diverse city, because we weren't afraid to lose. So to all you young people, the fact that you stayed on this call for over an hour and a half shows that you care about the present, but most importantly, you care about the future. And the only way you're going to make the change, I keep saying, it's not about just taking to the streets. It's taken to the books. It's taken to the voting booth. It's taken to the city hall. It's taken to the state legislature. It's taken to the Congress, and demanding that they work on policies and procedures and investments that help you and your future, not necessarily themselves. So do what you're doing. You're engaged. Love you guys, man. This has been a great hour and a half.
Thank you. And Roy, you're gonna close us out, and Roy's gonna bring him the last question, and then we're gonna say a few things. But if everybody can hold on and not tune off once we're done. Go ahead, Roy.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, so it's not going to be as good as the one Clifton said, but me and my friend we've always like had discussions about how HPD thinks like what they're doing is right, and like how would like the chief or the people in charge of HPD rate themselves. So my question for like you and the chief, assistant chief, and all those people would be, how would you rate yourself up to now, like on your actions, and not just like on your job or what you do, but as a whole HPD department? How would you rank yourself from like 1 to 10? And like, why would you rank yourself that?
Well, let me start, and I'll turn it over to Chief Finner. First and foremost, it doesn't matter what I think, because we work for you. We work for the community. It's kind of like what we measure. We helped we worked with Measure Austin, a young group of community activists, very young activists, African-American predominantly, where when I was there, we started coming up with measurements and measuring data that was important to them, because it doesn't matter. But I'll tell you right now, when our cops say, "Hey, chief, man, we're the best. We're number one. We are number one," which you want organizational pride, but you know my response is to my cops. I look around and I look at them. I said, if we're number one, I'd hate to see second best, because we got a lot of work to do. And I can tell you that in some areas we are an A. In some areas we're doing excellent, and some with going out and trying to do our best with relational policing, our youth programs. In some areas we're not doing that well, and there's a lot of work to be done. So it depends on what the category is, and some of it is completely under our control. Some of it goes beyond our control, but our standing and our performance in terms of our ability to provide you with the highest levels of safety, security, and service are impacted. So I would say that for what we can control, we range from an A all the way to a D, where you need improvement. I don't think we're failing at anything, but we definitely have a lot of areas where we still need to improve. What say ye, Chief Finner?
Hey, real quickly, I'm with Chief, man. You're not gonna get no pats on our backs here, okay? We're here to serve, but I do tell you this one thing. We are as good as our citizens are, okay? And what I mean by that, when you go into the neighborhoods, and I'm gonna tell you when I know we've arrived, okay? Instead of people saying, look at those cops, when they say, people in the hood all across our city say, you know what? That's my police department. That's my police officers. That's when you arrive. And I don't think we're there yet, but that's what I'm striving to be. When they take ownership, young men and young women like you, and I don't care what color you are, whatever, but in all our communities, and say, that's my police department. Those are my police officers. That's when we arrive. And that's when we'll stamp ourselves with a 10. We're not there yet, but you're going to help us. You're going to help us get there. And I'm so proud. You guys just don't know. And Chief is my witness. So many meetings, so many problems every day in HPD. And I think we're going on an hour and 40 minutes, and it's time well served. Y'all lift our spirits today. You really do, because we got hope. And just go and get it. Just like Chief said, if it's not illegal, go and get it. Put in that work and understand delayed gratification. Everything, if it's worth having, it ain't gonna happen overnight. Put in that work and wait for it, okay? So I'm proud of y'all today, and thank y'all. I'm just honored to be here with you.
Well, awesome. I think we're gonna look to end right there, and I want to thank everyone for coming on and sharing their wisdom, their experience, and but I tell you, for as much as all of you guys are on, and the support from Microsoft and all. And if everybody can stay on, don't log off, because we got to do some things after. But everybody stay on, don't delete off. But definitely want to thank Microsoft and for supporting. And please, there should be a survey in the chat for those that are watching. Please go to the survey and feel free to fill that out. We love the feedback, and it only helps us to get that much better in doing what we're doing. I also want to give a big round of applause as well to our young people. You guys were just awesome. I told you guys that was with me yesterday what I thought of you then. You guys are truly rock stars, and thank you so much, and thank you for Clinton as well for stepping up and being our moderator for the afternoon and all as well. And but again, thank you guys. Thank everyone for joining, and please feel free to join us. We have our next town hall session next week, September the 9th. 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 Central, and we'll be coming to you from the city of New Orleans. So please log in and hear from their chief and their mayor and everyone as well. Look forward to it, and thank you guys so much.
Make sure you tell Sean Ferguson I said hello, New Orleans.
Yeah.
All right.
Good guy. Everybody hold on.